Let's do this. We are recording. Here we are with the TSL podcast, Mason jar in hand. We have 2020 on in Melbourne, Australia. Man, you're the second guy, actually the fourth person this week I've talked to from Melbourne, but the second podcast I've done with somebody over there. But you're actually from the U.S. originally, yeah?
Yeah. Originally Pennsylvania, born and bred, and came over here in 2010, and almost never went back. So,
Cool. No, man. I am actually in San Antonio this weekend at the in-laws house, and normally I'm in Austin, but Melbourne and Austin, you had said something. You actually live there. I was only there for a couple weeks, but they're so similar. I mean, the
oh yeah,
people, the bike riding, except Melbourne's got a beach and it's bigger. It's
yep.
it's pretty amazing, man. There's some things that maybe I should have talked to you about before we started recording that I want to talk to you about.
It's
But
all right.
let's dive into there's three or four main topics. We might get caught up on one, but you've expressed that possibly you'd be on a few more of these things. So if we don't get it all done today, we don't get it all done today. But man, this is what I want to get into: trauma, uh, abuse, addiction, sexuality, all that sort of stuff. Of course, I run the sexual life, and TSL is really about basically, two different things coming together and creating a new one thing that everything, the philosophy, the principles of TSL, and how we communicate is ultimately to be how we should live, to ultimately be a better expression of yourself. Now, that being said, I've had my troubles with, traumatic events, all that sort of stuff, and trying to rework my brain in the right situation. But that's kind of one of your things. And so when I bring up that, where do you want to start in the equation of the life of 2020 when it comes down to really, really traumatic events?
Cool. I tell you, your camera just zoomed out. I don't know if that's
Okay.
indicatory of anything, but cool. Just letting you know. The So I mentioned part of the reason why you're bringing that up was back in 1989, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mhm.
I was in a prison riot and beat to death, revived, not a happy camper. Walked around having flashbacks and night terrors and terrified every time I heard a chainsaw, all that good stuff, and learned how to deal with that. And it's a small part of my story, but it's a significant event in the story because one of the things that taught me was, how much of our reality, quote unquote, is dictated by what we imagine about it. And it's not just what we think about it. Thinking somewhat rational, logical, but we are fascinating creatures in how we can mess ourselves up with our imaginations, and have that get in the way of all sorts of true expression of who we are and what's possible for us. So that's where I'd start.
Well, let me just chime in here with a bit of my story as well. Is for me, what I always say is sex was not my choice when I was growing up. Like I didn't have it was stuff was happening sexually when I was a kid that just kind of meant something, meant nothing, and it didn't seem to be that big of a deal. But you really can't say. But then I was a virgin all the way up till I was 18, and when I started going out with my girlfriend, she got kidnapped, she got raped. Clearly, this is like way more crazy for her, but I actually saw the guys who did it. I was there, and there were some dudes fixing a car, and I went across the street. As soon as I went across the street, the whole thing happened. It was a really intense event. I heard about it. The detectives told me about it. I'm not sure why. I heard about it from her, and then that added a massive distortion to my life and sexuality. And one that I'm definitely not complaining about now, one that's like, man, I think this is a part of the experience that allowed me to do what I'm able to do now, and experience who I am as Steve Mayeda. But it was crazy. I remember, we were 2 weeks into our relationship. I had had sex like 8 or 10 times, and then this happens. And then when we're having sex or when we're engaging and we stay together for a little while after that, I hear about different things like I hear about it. Some of them actually turn me on. I feel like terrible about that. I'm like, wow, oh my gosh, like this aggressive mentality during sex is so wrong. And after we broke up, didn't talk to, I tried to talk to women for 3 years, didn't have a girlfriend, nothing. And then when I started, interacting again with women, it was really difficult, I clearly liked sex, I clearly liked being with people, but I thought I had to be secretive if I liked certain things, like being rough or being a little bit more
Yeah, yeah,
aggressive
yeah.
or whatever. And then I'd watch pornography and I'd go like, oh my God, that's so crazy. He's choking her, like not really choke, but he's choking her and she's liking it. Oh, this is like this crazy world. And man, it was like there was no reality with sex, which sex is like the moment of just total oneness that could be happening. It also doesn't have to be. And it was just a false expression of self. And for years, it was totally, for lack of a better term, fucked up. It was just, I didn't get it, and so going through that, imagine this, like really from like 21 to like 29, 30, having a terrible image of sex with this massive sex drive that, well, it is what it is. But when I talk to other people, I tend to have been more active than others. And it was just confusing, where I really thought that there was a shame involved in it. Now, on the flip side, I also work with people who are in the whole addiction recovery scene. I've had my bouts with all that as well. And PTSD is such a massive, component to that, whether it's due to a traumatic event or due to what we think is a traumatic event.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and this is actually what I want to get into. In order for me to get over my shit, I had to treat it how I imagined it, not how I don't even know what the fuck happened. Like I have no idea. All I know is there was some trauma. The police have their evidence. 16 years later, they found the guys. So that was also a lesson in forgiveness too, because it didn't do anything for me to hold on to that resentment of like, I want to kill them, da da da. But yeah, for all I knew up until recently, that they were, they just went about their lives. But man, I had to treat the event how it happened in my mind, which then became this like distortion. So it was a trip. So when I heard your story, I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I actually heard a podcast with you of how you were rearranging your thoughts and the level of intensity of trauma that you went through. The reality is one thing, but the way that it holds in your mind is another. And man, when I work with guys, and let's say whatever it is, like let's say they, the very common thing is they're shooting up, they're doing heroin or something with their buddy, and their buddy dies, and they pull the needle out of the dude's arm and use the rest of the drugs on themselves or whatever it is. Like there's just such crazy guilt that's associated with it, that what I realized in this is it's not the level of intensity of it. It's the level of how different they think they are, how much they can't communicate with anybody else, and how they have to manage their own feelings inside rather than communicate them with someone else. And that is the least sexual thing that can be done. That's the least human and expressive thing that's possible. So I don't know, there's no real question in that. But that being said, where do
Well,
people start?
you bring up a really valuable word, and that word is different, right?
Hmm.
When we think we're different from other people,
Yeah,
okay, we're
absolutely. Yeah.
naturally gonna defense up,
Yeah.
right? We're gonna hide it, not share it. Now the thing is, we're all unique. None of us is different.
Right.
As a
Right.
member of humanity, we're all unique. And
Right.
again, some people think this is wordplay. It's nowhere near wordplay. This is reality because, like you said, when two people, so there's a part of you that likes the rough and wild side.
Hmm.
If you don't allow that to be a potential of yours, if you think, oh, this is different, and you hold it back, that constipates up your whole reality. Just doesn't block you
Right. Right.
sexually. It constipates everything up, right?
Right.
On the other hand, when you get that anytime two unique human beings get together, and I don't care if it's just, we're talking, doing our thing, or if it's me with my wife, you with your partner, or somebody just meets someone in a bar or at the library, it doesn't matter. But when two unique human beings get together and they're not going, oh, I'm different and defensive, or they're different, I got to be defensive. Whenever you move, drop the word different and move to the paradigm of unique, again, just one tiny little shift. Now you get to find out, how does Steve get to express his uniqueness with this
Absolutely.
woman that he's with? And
Yeah.
what can he bring out? What's going to be the uniqueness between you and her as well?
Yeah.
What's the new combination going to be? So it brings up a whole awesome thing versus, again, we've been told as kids, don't be different. Even like Sesame Street, one of these kids is not like the other, one of these kids is not the same, kind of thing.
Hmm.
It's like, there's nothing wrong with being unique because we're all unique.
And this is something which I think is, man, I think, you know, tell me if you disagree with this. I think that, man, most of our problems are disorders, psychological disorders, and not to discredit them. If you have a psychological problem, get help in the right place, with somebody who is a professional that's dealt with whatever issue you're dealing with. But I think the root of all of that has to do with this idea of being different or this idea of not fitting in with culture and a lack of equality. Addiction is something I talk about a lot, but man, there's a lot of qualities to addiction. There's a lot of like unique things that, I will talk about and say, no, you don't understand. This is what it is. But at the root of it, it comes down to, I feel, started with us feeling different because we didn't always have it. It's a fairly new characteristic, disease, whatever you want to call it. And if people think that they're different, if they think that they're not unified, they're not part of a whole, then man, it screws you up so bad. And man, I grew up with a great lifestyle around me of people trying to do things in the right way, but there wasn't a sense of community, there wasn't a sense of oneness, there was a lot of competition, and that's how I interpreted it. But I did not, in the way that I was living and grew up in the original map that my brain laid out, whether that was given to me, but or I interpreted it, and clearly I have to, it's mine. I got to live with it. I did not come up with a way of feeling a part of. And because of that, it distorted off into all this crazy shit. And the solution really came down to, how do I be a part of?
Right, right,
Um,
right.
it's a cool thing. Maybe this is something because we have a common friend who uh, uh, talks about a lot about Chinese philosophy, but um, describe that, the idea of the Wuji.
The Wuji is, but this is fascinating. Almost everyone's familiar with the yin, what people call the yin and yang
Right.
symbol, right? We'll just call it that for the sake of conversation. So we have the yin and yang thing, where you have the light and the dark, the male and the female, the masculine and the feminine, the two complements, right? That's sort of one that turn into each other. And a lot of people are familiar with that, but before that, there's basically the circle, and the circle is indicatory of Wuji, and Wuji is something. The term, if we try to translate it into English, it's just fascinating because Wuji almost means something like limitlessless,
Hmm.
and it's not
Wow.
limitlessness, but it's like it has to do with this vastness, this oneness, the potential that we come from. And again, words can be a little bit weird, but let me toss in something that'll appear unrelated called flirting. And the
Right.
definition that I use for flirting is what is reaching for what's possible. So we can start to explore dynamic. So, what is could be, your hand on her shoulder. What's possible is, where will the hand go? How will she enjoy it? What will she, we can, what is I've got a computer and a microphone. What's possible is I can participate in a podcast or create a coaching product or do a coaching session. But we've got to be able to explore this whole thing of actually noticing what is, which is almost literally unnoticeable, and also noticing the direction that we would the direction that it could freely move into, not forcibly move into, but also
Hmm.
freely move into.
Yeah. I think what I enjoyed most about this whole, because this was all new to me. when I start hearing about Wuji and the Taiji and all that sort of stuff, it's like, all right, why, get to reality here, guys. It's just like too much philosophy. How does that help me? How does that help somebody who's in pain? Stop, da da da. Da. But later on, and especially just doing my own project of TSL and working with so many people and just having such a diversity, the importance of that bedrock philosophy is really important. And we talked about something about the differences and the uniqueness. Every person is, unique and, has their own characteristics. But if we forget we're part of that whole, it's key. Or
Right.
we'll just that's where the disorder comes in. And so when we talk about that yin and the yang, um, the interaction of those two things is what we always see. And so it's like, oh, but there has to be a dark and a light, and let's really look at the dark and let's really look at the light. And I think people forget that it all comes back to how it comes to the one, how it comes back to the whole.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
let me just say this because I always get insecure when I hear people listening. If you want to be a guy and you want to have the best sex life, you want to have a good sexual interaction with the women that will make it fulfilling and you and all that stuff. And same thing if you're a woman. If you want that in any way you can imagine, in any way you can imagine, you need to realize that sex is a unification, and it's where
Yes.
you, through somebody else, not by yourself. You can surely have sex by yourself, but it's not what I coin as sexual health. But if you have it with another person that's different, different from you, they kind of have to be, right? But when you experience them, man, that's where it becomes this thing where we need sex to live. We need sex to be happy. We need sex for our emotional health, our mental health, our physical health. And I just see so many people putting restrictions on sex, which I essentially disagree with, um, and not learning how to be healthy or how to be a full expression of yourself sexually. And that fits directly, into your philosophy. One of the
Yeah, yeah,
things,
yeah.
uh, one of the things that we talk about all the time at TSL is like we interview these guys and you get an expert. Like I interviewed this guy from Melbourne, Mark Otobre. He's a personal trainer. He's top of the top. It's like we're talking about the same thing. It's crazy. I'm coming from that happening in sex with Mark. It has to do with having a relationship with your body and getting healthier. We're literally saying the same thing. It's just a different focal point.
Well, sex is not an act. Sex is an energy.
Hmm.
And when we get and I think no matter how it seems as if a lot of people don't get that. It's absolutely pure creative potential. It's absolutely pure surrendering to the moment potential, and it's really if you're going to stifle the sex act at all, you're stifling that sexual energy, the energy of creation, the energy of discovery, the energy of expansion in all areas of your life. And it's sort of like one of the things that I've worked with a number of clients is using sex as a barometer. It's like we're not going to fix your sexual life. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what's before that, the sexual energy,
Right. Mm.
where's the clog way before that? Yeah, so you're coming to me to work with sexual stuff, quote unquote. We'll just use that as a barometer for where the cool stuff is, and the cool stuff is always, essentially what are we? We're intelligence, we're love, we're energy. We're not the physical body. We're what drives the physical body. And so if we step back just a little bit from that and just, or if we're willing to go, okay, how about if I use sex as a barometer to see to see what's going on in there?
Hmm. What's something that you get often from people where there's a blockage in the drive?
It's interesting. It's, it's almost like we live in a culture that's addicted to formulas. Do
Right.
do
Totally. Yeah.
you do step one, do step
Yeah.
two, do step three, right?
Yeah. 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 That's one of my pet peeves.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so it's a fascinating thing because our culture is so addicted to the formula. You see, I'm a master. I'm not a master chef. I'm a master cook, right? But I never follow a recipe. I just sort of look what's in the pantry and look what's in the fridge, and it's
Mm.
like, let's do a dance with it. Let's flirt with it, right? What
Right.
is I've got these 7 ingredients and an
Right.
hour's worth of time. What's possible with all that, we get to find out. And it's always a lovely meal, right?
Right.
Now the key is the meal, there's no recipe, there's no step by step. So in life, one of the things that our culture is starving for is spontaneous creation, spontaneous expression. Just like you said earlier, I mean, you've got that rough part.
Hmm.
It needs to be spontaneously expressed.
Right.
And so when you
Yes.
find a partner that allows that, and when more importantly, when you allow yourself to do that, that'll show up in business. That'll show up, across the board,
Totally.
because that energy needs to be across the board. So the biggest thing that I see in our culture is this addiction to, okay, so what are the 3 steps?
Right.
Give me an example to follow. Can I use your example? I love when people do that.
Yeah.
People will email me and I'll say, well, can I use your exact steps to do what I want to do? And I said,
Yeah.
why would you want to? You're just cloning. You don't clone or copy, create. So,
Yeah.
so it's a vastly, vastly different experience and potential.
And this is one of those things. This actually came up on a call earlier that I was having with clients, and it's pretty awesome on Sundays. It's now Monday for you, but on Sundays we have this, like, starts off at noon Central Time, and it just goes. It's still going right now. It just goes till whenever somebody hangs up, and we just
Wow.
all the alumni talk and whatever, and new guys, whatever. But there's this question about a guy, and he's pretty young, really an active sex guy, active sex life. He he has almost like, this was my problem at one point. I had the ability, of course he's younger than me, but when I was like 30, 32, whatever, I had no problem. I had the ability. I had the ability to meet whoever I wanted and have pretty much anything that I could imagine that I thought I wanted sexually. I could execute, I could get it. Now, I never thought of it in like this step by step process, but I would, talk to people in those ways because different people learn different ways, all that sort of thing. But then we were talking about some philosophy with him, and he was like, man, I want to know the science. I want to know the science. Science is so important when it goes to this, this, and that, and da 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 da. And what is the step by step process? And he's asking really good questions. He's not being defiant in any way, but he's like, man, we don't look at that enough. And I was like, and then we got into this discussion about science, which this is going to sound kind of weird, but nature is the absolute, right? And sex is of nature, So we have a sexual urge, and it's our natural urge, and we were born to be sexual. We were born to be social. We were born to, unify with one another. We were born to do a whole bunch of things, and then somehow humanity makes it happen. How it happens doesn't have to be that way, and so a lot of the times, what I'll say is science is actually man's relationship to what is the absolute, what is of nature, and so although it's absolutely right, we're doing all these experiments. These are great. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying they're great. But when we
Right?
see science is more important than nature, the absolute, we will lose. We'll figure out something to live a certain way, and it'll somehow, get screwed up. It'll all fall apart, right? And we have to know that. We have to know, like, I am a fan of sexuality. I'm a fan of people interacting. I am a fan of diet and fitness. I'm a fan of different types of things. And that's really all I can be. For me, it was a big deal. I worked as an artist for, God, my whole 20s, basically. And I never thought I was the one creating. I thought I was interacting with something. I mean, man, I'd get these ideas, and I don't know where the fuck they came from. And I had to do them. And then my ego, took hold of them and, put identity on them or whatever. But it was really me being a fan of this thing that I got. And sex, the same thing. It was so powerful. I mean, I've never felt anything like I've never, I would sit there and, let's say, hear about sex, read about sex, learn about it in sex ed. When porn comes along, porn comes along, you go, oh man, this is great. But then when you're there and you're looking into somebody's eyes and you feel yourself, and you could be totally doing everything wrong. And that's how powerful sex is. It can set you straight, and I'm looking, and a noise comes from that woman, and I know it's coming from me. And it was like the most beautiful thing in the
You
most
betcha.
fucked up situation. We could be drunk and like, in some hooking up and in some shady scenario or whatever. And it's fucking awesome. And that's why it's like there's no rules. If you're being you and they're being them, it's an awesome, beautiful experience. But I guess this all spawned off of the whole like checklist culture. We have to have a formula. Formulas are great. They build consistency, but formula without the natural thing, the of nature, human expression, the individuality is so flawed and screwed up. And why would you want to do that? Of course you want the results, but let's actually talk about that, because this is something that boggled my mind forever and frustrated me to the point. It's like, I want the result. I want the result of getting laid. I want the result of making money. I want the result of being happy. What do I do? And what's, I guess, the difference between the result and, I call it the experience, but what would you call it?
We could call it the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm real curious about so the result is X.
Right, right. The result
Okay.
is I want to make X amount of money.
Right. So my question. So if I'm working with a business guy, right, and let's say you want to double your money, who do you get to become as you're doubling your money? So not only how do you optimize the business,
Mm,
but who do you
right,
get to become? Because if you're not
right.
bumping into your bullshit, you may make twice as much money, but you're going to be twice as nuts. So
Yes,
so 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 if we're going to double your dating, okay,
right.
or double your business or anything. But by the way, I love doubling, and let me tell you why real quick. Because doubling is something that we can relate to. I look at you and I see you've got two eyes, two ears, two hands. Right now, if you hold up two hands, do that for
Hmm.
me.
Yep.
Yep. Close one. Close both. You've just doubled the amount of closed hands that you have. So
Hmm.
neurologically, there's a part of you that knows what doubling means more intimately than anything else.
Hmm.
So you can close one eye, you can open
Right.
both eyes, and instantly, neurologically, your brain goes, wow. Even though there's only double the eyes open, there's 10 times the experience with two eyes open because of binocular vision, right? So when we talk about doubling income, doubling dating, doubling anything, this creates a goal based scenario or an outcome based scenario, which challenges us in a way that's easy to ramp up. But because there's something in you, again, just like walking, you've got 2 feet. Whenever we're talking about doubling, it's not only how you change psychologically or personality wise, but it's also neurologically. We change on multiple levels, one of the biggest traps that I see from doing coaching for uh, God, all my adult life essentially, is that if the outcome is only defined on the outside, or primarily if we attention's like a flashlight. And so if we shine the flashlight only on the outside, which is like, okay, I just want to double the income, that's nice. But who do you become as you're doubling the income?
Right.
What changes do you go through? I'm a third of the way through a 10-week coaching program right now that has to do with making more money and personal efficiency. And I found that I couldn't roll tobacco anymore because I realized how much time I was spending rolling cigarettes every day. And even though it wasn't that much time, it was still enough. I was having to take little breaks from doing things and roll a ciggy and light it and roll a ciggy and light it.
Hmm.
So I switched over to vaping because I mean, heck, I can fill up two vaporizers and go all day without an interruption, right? But literally in the process of doing that course and becoming more effective, more efficient myself, yeah, I had to stop smoking and start vaping, which is also showing up in my personality in some other weird ways. But we really get to notice if we're gonna have an outcome, how else is our life going to change? How else are we going to change? What's going to change in our personalities? What's going to change in our physiology? And we've got to be willing to shine the flashlight on those areas as well. Otherwise, it's boring and stressful.
Man, it's funny because I think when we're in a point of stagnance, well, okay, I'll speak for myself personally, but when I'm at a point of stagnance in my life, I don't see the potential for change. As you're saying, the potential for change is in all things. You set off, whatever it is. Like we start working on our diet, and then everything in our life starts to move around. But anybody who goes through a pretty big change in whatever it is, whether they work on their fashion, their perspective, making money, yada yada yada, any of those things, man, what's so crazy is they'll all tell you that it affects like their entire lifestyle. And yeah, I guess when it comes to that personal change mechanism in us, let's talk about the potential that's possible, because people don't realize how much that is. And I know in the changes that I've made in my life, like let's say, hey, I want to learn how to pick up women better. I want to get laid. And here's what it was for me. It was like there was one girl that I like was like what they call the one-itis girl. And I'm like, man, I can't. If only I had the skills for that, then I'd be happy, right? Well, then I get these skills, and then it just accentuates my insecurities, right? To right? Because that's what I'm dealing with. But then later on, my head gets a little bit better. I start working on myself in different ways, and start learning how to be happy. When I come to a point of change in my life, it has the potential to express in all areas, and it's really, really cool. Whether that's seen by a lot of people or just experienced by me, man, it's experienced by me, and it's cool. So that potential for change, once you walk on that road, which everybody, hey, we're always changing, where do you see that let's say limitlessness? Where do you see the people go and what can happen and all sorts of different stuff,
So why would you want to change? Why would you want to transform your life? Right?
Because something's not right.
Okay. And what does that create in you?
Tension.
Okay. So what we want to do is, first of all, so if there's let me clear my throat.
Do it.
So there's got to be so think of life as a harp string.
Okay.
So with the perfect amount of tension, right? That harp string, with the perfect amount of tension, is pure potential for creating beautiful music.
Mm-hmm.
Too much tension, too little tension, not good, right?
Right.
So one of the things that we've got to notice, if we're going to engage the creative, the transformational power that we are, the sexual energy that we are, is we get to stop defending. It does no good to defend any part of your life. And I'll give you a little bit of an example for that. A year and a half ago, I went to the doctors. They diagnosed me with extreme hypertension, right? Really high blood pressure. And at the time,
I have that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I shouldn't be smiling.
So I go to the doctors. They tell me this. Well, at the time, for a couple of years now, Victoria and I have been doing Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet.
Okay.
And I'd been I've been eating no root vegetables, no fruits, a hell of a lot of soy sauce and fish sauce and stuff like that. So I had a lot of sodium and no magnesium and so on and so forth. And a lot of cottage cheese, which is high in sodium, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm reading all these things that will help lower the blood pressure pretty fast. First thing I do is I program myself to respond well to dietary therapy. Second of all, I change the diet a bit and some other things. But I had to approach my health differently. I had to not have to defend my diet. So the reason I mention that is because I had to go from everybody does that. And when you defend anything, you've got a choice. You can create or defend. And most people think it's attack or defend. Not a chance. Attacking is defending, right? They're both the same thing. So to go from, again, attacking, defending, we've got the yin and the yang. Most people would say attack is black, defending is white, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. If we're going to move back to Wuji, back to that oneness, again, look at all the old scriptures, even Native American stories, Hindu stories. It all comes down to something created something. Something said, "Let there be light." And so what we are, made in the image of that something, according to all spiritual traditions and all mystics. So we are that creative power. So as that creative power, we've got to drop any tendency to defend. any tendency. For me to say I have to defend my diet was hurting my health. I had to basically just sort of revamp the diet a little bit for a period of time and do some other stuff. But defending anything shuts down the creative capacity, and that's all healing is. Healing is a creative capacity to create the body in the more ideal, more natural image of what we truly are. So we've got to be able to drop that defending thing. What was the question? Because I just got lost.
Well, I'm hip on this defending thing, but man, something about checklist cultures. I don't know. I'm lost in it.
Doesn't matter.
What was it? Now I'm totally bugged by it. But I was like so on the defending of whatever it is you're involved in, the potential for change.
Yes.
But as you were talking about this, it made me think, wow, just because we just had this discussion, about anthropology and whatnot, when a culture has to defend itself, that's when it starts to get in this like scarcity mode and really causes a lot of problems, and let's just to make an analogy, somebody was saying that, I think I said something like jealousy isn't a necessary human trait. Okay. And so everybody was like, what? No. It totally is. Yada, yada, like greed, yada, yada, yada. Here are these examples. And my whole thing was like, look, I don't live in these cultures, but there's plenty of studies that say on like, small tribal based cultures, these things don't exist, right? These human emotions don't exist. But and they're like, it is what humanity says. It is what is, and I'm like, but see, we have to realize it's not, so that we can realize our potential, right? Our potential for change. Because it's only when things like greed or jealousy or whatever, there's a lot of different things, like this, we might feel anger, but there's not this like massive sense of anger and vengeance and whatever the hell, happens. That's a product in an absolute of a totalitarian society or a type of culture that came with a huge population with a lot of people that, when just too many people came into play, there had to be a lot of rules, there had to be a lot of restrictions, there had to be the life of that society was more important than the individual, all that sort of stuff. And that's really the world that you and I and pretty much everybody else lives in, except in these little, kind of like tribal type cultures. But what's important about that is that when we get caught up in that, fucking defense of stuff, which I do, man, that shot off a lot of flags for me, which are some of the other topics I want to talk to you about. But man, that defense, it makes it impossible for us to express. As you say, create. It makes it impossible for us to be authentic, to be our real self. It makes it impossible. Then we're constantly having a reaction rather than an experience. It's like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, wait, I have to have boundaries. Oh man, this, I'm feeling, something here that's not allowing me to feel with what's around me. And it's really one of those toxic things that I never thought about, man, that defense. Because I get crazy with stuff. I can't do this because of that. Here's why. This type of martial art's better than that martial art. Here's what, it's like, I heard this one thing on the radio. This is what I was delivering pizzas when I was like 16, and it said that we define ourselves in modern American culture or whatever it was by what we disagree with, and that proves intelligence. And it's like, man, what a shitty way to look at things, What a shitty way to go.
When we get the tiny bits backward, we're screwed. I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. Right? Total bullshit. Because you can think. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I am, therefore I can think. Can is a permissive verb, right? I think, therefore I am means you have to think all the time to prove you exist. So in other words, you've just gone from creating to proving. And once you go to proving, you have to defend what you prove. And there's this cascading series of events that we call insanity. So literally, right? And it's just like an airplane. An airplane crashes because of a cascading series of events. People do the craziest things. Like I'm almost ashamed to say it. And I've done a lot of training with NLP and a lot of courses in NLP, right? And I almost hate to say it because I had to, at some point, I called myself the weird, obtuse NLP guru because I disagreed with most of it.
Yeah.
Because if your presuppositions suck, I think, therefore I am, that means I'll never shut up, I'll never experience internal peace, and I'll never be able to put my attention on her or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
or the world. So it's the crazy little things like, the presupposition that we have to do something to create rapport. You don't have to do anything to create rapport. Rapport is the natural
I
condition.
agree. Yes.
So, so, so,
Yes.
so, so if we live life knowing rapport is the natural condition, because there's two things in a room, they're humans, they're the things most like
Hmm.
each other. There's going to be natural rapport between the two humans, not a human and a light bulb. So if rapport is the natural condition, we don't have to learn rapport techniques. We have to learn how to notice, how do I screw up the rapport?
Right.
How do I get in the way
Right.
of it?
Totally. Yeah.
As soon as you get that, your model goes right on its head, and now you can actually start connecting with people instead of doing like, oh, what technique can I do to connect with him?
Yeah. Yeah. And see, this is the thing that the more people actually have sex, they realize that that's the natural state. You realize that that's what it
Absolutely.
is. And so I actually think that there's social behavior and sexual behavior. There's distinctions, but of course they interplay with each other massively. But uh, I think rapport serves sex. So I think that the natural state is sex, and then rapport is this slower, less intense version of the sexual interaction. But it's the constant. Like when I
Oh
talk to
yeah,
people like, okay, so pickup, right? Pickup, it's like the attraction game. And 90%, I'd say more than 90% of the material out there on how to meet women is the attraction game. This 2 minute phase of whatever. And what I say, it's a phenomenon when people don't know each other. And, in this culture, it's not an absolute. Rapport is the absolute, seduction is the absolute. That there's this stuff that they do to try and communicate better. And what you got to get to is that rapport, that constant. You got to get on that. But in order to get there, there's these little things going up and down, and those little things up and down are trying to pull it into that constant. And if we can get to that rapport, man, then we can get to know each other. And it's like, well, how do you define rapport? And the best thing that I came up with is that I care about you and you care about me and we care about what each other thinks of each other. I mean, when we're being human, essentially. So if people could get to that conversationally, man, that would change so much. That would change so much. And it's so retardedly simple that it's like, man, if I just care about you and you care about me, it's
right.
all good. Good stuff will happen. Well, what if I get hurt? What if they don't like me? Well, what if I get picked on again? All that sort of stuff. But man, that is it. And we will create, when I work with clients and then when you kind of like open up a Pandora's box, or even with myself, it's like, when I opened up, I care about you and you care about me, and I'm going to start broadcasting that a little bit more around, the people around me. Man, the beliefs that I had built up in my head that limited my experience were just
Yeah,
out
gone.
of control. There was just
Yep.
crazy. And yes, and when I started to have
Yep.
those experiences of like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, it feels good. It feels good when
Yeah.
somebody smiles. Oh, she doesn't have to fuck me. She can just think, this is cool. And actually, this is even better. It's like, wait a minute. They don't even like me, but I got to express myself. I got to be me. Okay. It feels bad that they don't like me, but man, that's amazing. I feel like there's a weight lifted off my chest. Now I can be free and express it. It's really kind of a cool thing when we get there. It's just awesome. So the potential is pretty big, huh?
The potential is, you know, yeah, I almost get lost for words here. It's just awesome. So, how many people a week do you make love to?
One,
And who is it?
Maria. Uh,
Ah,
yeah.
my challenge to you is to make love to at least 100 people a week. And when I say the term "make love," here's my definition for
Mhm.
it. Allow yourself to express you in a way that invites them to allow them to
Right.
express them. So I go to the supermarket. Before I get through the produce section, I've probably made love to at least 3 people. Could be a little old lady, could be a little old guy, could be a 4-year-old little girl. Doesn't matter. But if there's that permissive contact, just the openness of me being willing to be simple, silly, present, allows them to be simple, silly, present in their own way. Suddenly there's two people that have connected, even if it's just for a moment. There's a connection, a creation, and then the separation. And gosh, a trip to the grocery store could be 100 people get to be made love to.
Yeah.
And when they walk away, they're glowing like it.
Are you that freaky guy that walks around the grocery store just smiling and like, hey?
I can be extremely friendly, yes. But the thing, even if I'm cranky, there's an openness.
Sure. Absolutely,
So that authentic expression of the moment, like literally, I'll pick up mushrooms and I'll be going, my God, I can't believe how much the mushies are today. And just turn to someone, can you believe this, right? Yeah, they're twice as much as they were last week. And suddenly they'll start on their thing. But even if they try to do a rant, they can't do the typical BS rant. There's something about them that shows up. And that's the beautiful part. Because again, what's the best thing after sex? It's the after sex glow.
Yeah.
And whenever you're doing any encounter with a human, because you're not working for rapport, you realize you're already in rapport, and you just notice all I've got to do is open up, and that invites them to open up. And when that happens, all somewhat with intention, but you have the intention, but it spontaneously happens. Again, 100 people get made love to while you go out in public. Whether it's at the bus stop or the grocery store, it doesn't matter. You leave people and they're glowing more, not because of something you did to them, but by something that you shared with them.
Yeah.
Which is that pure potential.
That's the title of this podcast, Make Love to the World. 2020, Make Love to the World. Because, it's such a great idea. TSL, we teach all this stuff, and it's great. It's awesome. It's like, again, I'm a fan. I don't own these, I don't own the system of humanity, but how we learn about just being sexual and the different points that we hit when we are, and how we can look at those and intensify things, how we can gain rapport through conversation, all that sort of stuff, meaningless if we cannot learn how to say hello.
Yes.
If we don't know how to just say hello, and not worry about, it's like Steve, look, how do I get a girlfriend? But Steve, how do I, all this talk from desperation. And man, I've been hungry too. We'll get into probably stuff that I'm hungry about now, but when we're speaking from that point of starvation and scarcity and the threatening and defending, all that sort of stuff, man, it's just, it can't allow us to express. And so if we can't just say hello, and say hello to 5 people a day and not care about what they say. Hey, how's it going? Nobody asks that anymore. Right. Nobody really, how are you doing? Well, I'm just curious. I don't mean to waste your time, whatever, and just learn to have that conversation. It's so great. And actually where I met my, the greatest woman in my life, where I met Maria was at a cafe where I would tell guys who were all into pickup, I'm like, okay, you're going to go out in a club, you're going to approach all these people, yada, yada, yada. If I just sit here, I'll meet somebody and make a connection, and they'll be cool. They'll reflect my life. And every once in a while, that's a woman. And every once in a while, that's a woman that I'm attracted to. And if you actually put the statistics down, which, human beings aren't statistics. I mean, I would meet 2 people that were, potential lovers or very close people in a week, in 2 hours of sitting around somewhere doing what I wanted to do. And that was so dependent upon me just being myself. And everybody's, may hear that and think oh, it's this pickup thing. No, it's when I took the pickup shit out of my life.
Exactly.
That's when I could exist. This is another funny thing with seduction.
Hey, can I run with this real quick?
Do it.
Something really cool. So there's so many quote unquote schools or thoughts out there. How do I make her more comfortable with me?
Yeah. Right.
So we're going into duality, which makes things really weird, because if there's 2, there can be 4, 6, 10, and then you can have all the conversations in your head and be nuts, right? So we can just shuttle that down. So instead of worrying about how do I get her to be more comfortable with me, just being comfortable with you When you
Yeah.
become when you decide, you know what, I'm going to be comfortable sitting
Yeah.
here drinking a beer, smoking a cigar,
Right.
just
Ah,
being me.
yeah.
I'm just going to drink a beer and smoke a
Yeah.
cigar and read a weird book. Suddenly, they don't need to be drink. You can meet someone who's not into beer, not into cigars, not into books, but because you're comfortable in your own skin, you've invited them to be comfortable in their own skin. Because when
Mm.
people aren't comfortable in their own life, they're out there making other people uncomfortable in their lives. And just committing to that, just what am I going to do today? I mean, it's years ago, I used to focus on, I want to make sure that I do a nice, proper presentation, sit right in front of the camera and say all the words right and all that crap. And I was boring as hell. What I've noticed is, from what I can tell, I appear to be more entertaining. At least I am to me, because I don't know what I'm going to say yet. And I get to be comfortable being me, which invites you to be comfortable being you. And the whole world just shifts. The people around you just go, "Oh, cool. I feel comfortable when I'm around him." Not because you've anchored him or hypnotized him, but because you're comfortable being you. You invite them into that state, into that
So
cloud.
your abilities on doing what you do best is dependent upon you being you.
Absolutely.
Badass. Do you smoke cigars?
Oh yeah.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite? I do too. I'm a fan. I love them.
My favorite cigar that I can't get here in Australia is a Rocky Patel. Gosh, what
Never
were
had them.
they? Yeah, I love Rockies. What were they? 90s? I can't remember. I can see the red label on it, but it's
Mm,
been so long. We don't have Rocky Patels in Australia for some reason. But I get to smoke Cubans for like $8 a piece.
yeah.
So go
Wow.
figure. Yeah, I
My
I can pound
favorite,
down a Cuban.
my favorite cigar, man. Bolivars,
Ooh,
Cubans. They're oh god, they're so good. They're so good. It was. I remember. I had. Well, I had a. Oh god, man. See, I know the labels. I don't know the names, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the Flor Dominica, whatever the super dark cigar. I hadn't had a cigar in years and didn't really know much about them. And I was in Orlando, and there's this big cigar shop on the corner of in downtown Orlando. And I went in, and it was near my birthday, and I got a cigar, and I was like in a grumpy mood or something. I smoked this thing, and just somehow the nicotine or whatever just boom, and I was like, wow, I am so relaxed and so happy. It's actually been a while since I've had a cigar, but
Excellent.
I used to,
We'll have to do one sometime.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Maybe next show we can just
I'm
no one else, everyone will just see the smoke.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because oh man, they're just such a relaxing thing. I truly enjoy them. There's a couple things that I want to talk about, and one gets into man some of the things that I'm defensive about. Okay,
Oh,
so
rock
I've
on.
always been resistant towards internet marketing. In fact, it truly hate it, and then I found out I don't truly hate it. I hate bullshit. I hate when
Mhm.
people are full of shit, and there was just so much around it. And myself, man, I've had an AWeber account for maybe 7 years or something. I've been in the scene teaching for 7 or 8 years.
Right,
Uh,
right.
Internet marketing. I get approached by internet marketers all the time. Emailed. I got emailed.
So there's this group called Internet Marketers, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there's this group, the enemy, right? This group called internet marketers.
Yeah.
But check this out. So the thing is that uh, I've been involved. I've met so many people, man. I would say that I know like tons of people. We know some of the same people in Austin, and all good people.
Well,
Like
well,
I,
you live at the internet marketing hub of the world, as far as I'm
yes.
concerned. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I talked to you. We're like, hey, let's do a podcast. Hop on you on on Skype. You know, I know that you're now pretty affluent in the whole scenes of internet marketing or whatever. And then check this out. So we talked, I don't know what it was, let's say Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. I get this
Right.
client who is a reference, don't know him, whatever, from wherever. And he's an e-commerce dude and super successful. I mean, at a very high end. So guess what he does? He's like, man, Steve, you're doing something. I've worked with a lot of guys in this, and I really don't care about the whole pickup thing. I want to communicate. I want to be able to meet people and connect with them, and I see you do it, and it's unreal. And this is how I taught him. I said, all right, we're going to go out tonight. What's one thing you care about yourself? What's one thing you're afraid to talk about, that you feel isn't that people wouldn't like? and we're going to talk to him about it. And here we're just going to ask a question, then we're going to tell a story about it. And we're going to ask a question. We're just going to do that. I'll do it for you a couple times and show you. And it just so happened that all my conversations that night went well. It doesn't always happen because, it's dependent upon me being me and them being them, right? So basically, he's like, man, this is great. This is so cool. He's like, the reason why I'm in Austin is because I am going to Ryan Dice's internet marketing, whatever mastermind thing. And, I'm one of his high level guys that's paying, 25 grand a year for it. And he's like, it's the most worth it thing. And I'm like, and he's like, dude, I'll get you an extra ticket. I have a free pass. We all get a free pass, but mine are being used up by my employees. And, basically I'm pretty good friends with the whole group and I've done it twice. I'll see if you can come. First thing I do. And I caught myself, man, because I was actually thinking about you and a few other people and listening to some of your other stuff, talking about possibility and potential. As I go, the first thing is I say, man, you know what? I'm not going to use it. Like, I appreciate it, but it's like, I'll screw it up. I'm at too low of a level. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Sorry. I'll go. Because I was thinking about, what am I doing? Why am I immediately sabotaging myself? Anyway, long story short is I go to it and it was amazing. I've been to a lot of internet marketing stuff, but I finally got to meet Frank Kern. Cool stuff. I've watched his videos for a long time. And it was really interesting because that's where I realized it was like, man, I don't like when people are full of shit, but anything to help me express myself fits in with my overall philosophy and why the hell am I resisting it? And, you had brought up the NLP thing and there were some NLP people there and it's one of those things that because I've always had a problem with NLP. Not that I really knew, but our mutual friend actually is one who changed my mind a bit towards NLP. But I was always like, man, you're not going to cure a drug addict with NLP. A guy trying to keep a needle out of his arm or, coke out of his nose or something that's in that obsessive. You're not going to cure it with that. Like, whatever, it's bullshit. And, I was just so resistant to so many different things. I guess what my question is here is how is it that you were able to build or go past that hurdle? With resistances towards NLP, with marketing, you do quite a bit of marketing. You're good at it.
I'm nonstop.
It's
Yep.
you're always doing it. But you do it in a way that is really your expression. I don't see you as a guy that's like, here's the 3 things that you get to say to, have people, give you a magic wand or something.
I've really tried to write that stuff, right? Because it sells.
Yeah.
But I can't. Every time I try, I crash and burn because there's no juice behind it, right?
Right.
So we've got to come from a place where there's juice. So how do you deal with something like that? Okay, so let's talk about a rapport technique, right?
Sure.
To use this as a metaphor, but it's really good. So one of the ways to quote unquote gain rapport or have rapport with somebody is to speak at the same rate they speak at, right? Because the rate you speak at is the rate you think at. So for some people, you talk slower. For other people, you talk faster, right? Notice how they speak and speak at the same rate, right?
Right.
Now, some people say, isn't that manipulative? Yeah, I'll go back to what you said earlier. It's loving and it's honest. Because if I take the time, if my intention is to notice at what speed does Steve think, that's the speed I want to communicate with him at because it's the most loving thing I can do.
Right.
So suddenly, we're 2 cars going down the road at the same speed.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing manipulative about that. So it's the same thing with marketing. If you honest to God believe in what you do, it's your duty to learn how to communicate it in a way that makes it compelling for the people that you can help to get involved with it. And so you use every tool you can to effectively communicate, this is how I can help you. This is your pain. This is how I can help you. This is my guarantee. And if you don't do that, you're attacking the world because you don't want to be an internet marketer. Shame on you.
It's so funny. So this is one of the things that I saw at convention, and this is an example of where I disagree with a lot of the stuff. But Frank Kern was talking, he broke down the sales process. And then he was like, but this one lady has a better sales process than me. He gives her the microphone. She's in the audience. And all these people at this mastermind, there's like, 200 people there or something. They're all, a lot of them are on the level, they're like some excellent people. So this lady, actually, she lives in Melbourne. But she was talking about her sales process. And I was like, wow, this is so quick. Because she basically said, she's like, Frank just broke down something for people with money who know what it's like to earn money. Well, I deal with people. This is where I thought it was so crazy, but fascinating, and fascinating with what she was doing. But she said, I work with people who may not have money, who don't have any self-esteem and don't know where to go. And this is how I do it. Would you guys be interested in that? So everybody's like, yeah. And then she goes through it, and it was crazy. It was crazy, and it was just nuts. And she kept saying, this was one of the weird things. And I do a lot of similar stuff, is this, when I'm talking to people, but with a different direction. I don't want to say it's just for seduction. It's mainly for rapport, but in a very Steve way. And she basically gets into the resistance of the person and alleviates that and, makes them feel good. It's excellent communication and builds this massive bridge of rapport. And the whole time she kept crediting it, which is one of those things that's kind of weird with NLP, where it's like, oh, well, you see what I did. You see oh, well, that's impossible for the person to say no because I pre-framed it and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, that can't be true, because I if that were the case, I'm really fucking good at this shit, and I could go sex with me, and somebody can still say no. Somebody can still totally be like, no, I don't want that, no matter how good I am at whatever. But anyway, it was really awesome. So afterwards, I'm like, man, I want to podcast with this girl. She is saying some like impressive stuff. I mean, very similar to what I'm saying. It's just so cool. It was masterful. So I go up to her and I say, hey, yeah, you're from Melbourne. Melbourne, Austin, a lot of similarities. And, I said my friend 2020 was talking about it. And so we're talking a little bit about that. And then she goes, oh, but do you know so-and-so? And she introduced me to another guy there. And the dude is like, oh, yeah. And I'd seen him speak too. And I was like, man, that was a great speech on like time management, all that sort of stuff. I really dug it. Cool. And she goes, you see what I did there? You see what I did? To make me look more whatever, I deflected the conversation over there, and then it was just like, you know what? Nice to meet you. Wow, like it just rubbed me the wrong way in such a way, because it was like, I don't want to be an experiment for a technique. I want to have a fucking conversation with you, and you are great at what you do, but man, if you are unwilling to have a conversation with me, then like, it just made me feel odd, to the point where it was like, get out, and bailed. But that encases what I dislike about a lot of the seduction industry and a lot of the NLP, or maybe
marketing NLP. A lot of that's out there, right? Well, when you
so
put
how'd
the
you
power
deal with
outside,
that?
when you put the power where there isn't any, nobody likes it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whenever when I study how to write. I'm studying how to write so I can bless more people. Literally, I get it. It's the creative act that blesses the client. So I create the product or whatever, the coaching session, and you have to get the client involved with it in somehow. But it's all acts of creation. It's all from the Wuji coming to the Taiji. So it's all that potential, growing. But it's not about the technique. It really is. If we go back to the whole sexual energy part, it really is about two people connecting. Because if two people connect in a coaching session, or two people connect even over a product or whatever, there's something being given birth to. And so there's got to be the honoring of the individual, not her, telling you, literally, as far as I'm concerned, she was being defensive with you. She was not allowing herself to connect with you. It's like, you notice, here's a technique. Hey, here's a technique. The technique is what's cool. Right. And you're saying, hey, you're cool. I'd like to connect with you. Oh, no, I'm not. It's the technique.
Yeah.
Go away, And
it's a weird thing, because technique-wise, it's like I can do I don't care. Like I got the recording of it. I can figure. I do what she does. You know, not to say that I'm her or whatever, but I just respected it, and it was cool. Like I respected
And
it.
you
Fuck.
respected her.
Yeah, yeah, I respected her, man.
Yeah.
Totally,
She wasn't respecting that you respected her.
totally, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So there's the massive disconnect. So I'm sure at some point she's going to be taking training in how to get rapport with people because she keeps blowing them off at this stage of her life, or maybe she won't. Who knows? But it's funny because she's breaking the connection. So it's just that's probably one of the primary problems with NLP, seduction, marketing, so on and so forth. If the
Mm,
emphasis is in the wrong place,
yeah,
you're never going to have connection.
yeah,
If the emphasis is on how can I connect better with Steve,
right,
of course we're going to connect better because I care about connecting with Steve. If it's
yeah.
more like, oh, how can I use this technique to manage a connection with Steve? The energy goes to the technique and the connection, not to
Hmm.
Steve. And it's such a little difference, but it's where's the power? The power
Yeah,
is you. The power is me.
that's so true. You know, that's one of those things that we value big time that I don't look at enough of the connection. The connection is it's one of those TSL philosophies, you know, that we really try and hold to. But I forget a lot myself. Um,
It's still human, man.
oh, totally. Yeah, gotta be. You gotta be,
Yeah,
man. What? Why is everybody running from being a human? It's such a good thing, man. That
that's
being
right.
said, I don't know how much time you have. I mean, I can go forever. I don't really have a limit towards these things or anything like
Uh,
that.
I got about another 10 if that works.
Cool. Talk to us about Neville Goddard. That's your
Wow.
right now. That's one of the things that you're doing. I don't know much about it. I've heard little bits and pieces. What word are you spreading to the world?
Cool. Neville. So there were three things that cured my mind whenever I was totally screwed up, right? Yeah. So here's the preface: neurolinguistic programming, Native American philosophy, and survival skills, which is a whole other program. We can talk about weird things that are cool
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the third thing was Neville Goddard. Now, Neville Goddard is, he's the mentor of Wayne Dyer, who just about everybody
Yeah.
knows, nice bald guy on PBS, right? Does a really phenomenal job. I love Wayne. He's freaking awesome, right? So Neville was Wayne's mentor, okay? And what Neville taught was two things. A lot of, Neville essentially could be considered the godfather of what most people call the law of attraction, which drives me nuts, but that's okay. So Neville taught two things. What you hold in mind tends to manifest in your life. And the reason why is because you're one with source, right? And so if you bring those two things together, what a unique opportunity to do two things. Again, I'm going to approach Neville at a very oblique angle. One, so with Neville, what you hold in mind tends to manifest because you decide I'm going to feel it now. Okay, so if you want to be a more attractive person, feel attractive now. If if you delay gratification, and addicts, I did a lot of work with addicts myself back in the States. Addicts are the masters of delayed gratification, which the 12-step movement I think has exactly backwards. They say you have to learn how to delay gratification.
Hmm.
But from what I could tell, addicts were masters of delayed gratification. In other words, I'll be happy after I steal the TV, after I get heroin, and after I shoot up. That's delayed gratification.
Sure.
So the cool thing about Neville is Neville basically says, look, feeling is the secret. If you want to have something new in your life, feel it. And it's not about feeling $1 million or feeling a car or something like that. It's about feeling what would it be like if I created value in people's lives? How would I feel? How would I feel if I was the ideal spouse, partner, whatever? And if you can generate the feelings now, the feelings are going to change the universe, which includes your body. So since your body is part of the universe, you're not your body, you're what animates the damn thing. So since you animate the body and you've chosen to feel a particular way, your decisions will change, your behaviors change, your entire life changes from the inside out. And again, why is it possible? Because we are, one with source. We are what animates the body. We're part of what animates the whole universe. So it's sort of like we're a wave in this ocean of consciousness. And getting into that, we could have a lot of fun there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I want to. And just so people know, again, uh, equating things to dramatic events or whatever, you know, whatever. It's how you experience. But man, we didn't get into this. You were beaten to death.
Yep.
You had like some extreme shit happen to you.
Yep.
That's in you're now you okay. So guys who I've dealt with that
Let,
have
let's
post
go for another
traumatic.
20 minutes if you can. You want to do another 20 minutes?
I'm
I
down.
can
I'm
do that.
down. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But post traumatic stress is you are not like somebody who has PTSD. Somebody who has here's how I know, especially dealing with addiction stuff. Guys who are war vets don't really talk to them. That's a different angle or whatever. Not to say that that's different. It's just I talk to the junkie dudes.
Right, right,
But
right. Good on you.
man, it's like, hey, do you want to go meet at Kirby Lane and get some coffee and get something to eat? Well, yeah, are you gonna be there? When are you gonna be there, man? Okay, I'll be there. I'm just gonna wait in my car. And it's just like this, like there's so many just different characteristics that come out.
You
The
betcha.
the working, not caring. Maybe having a job just to get by, not just man. But one thing I love is anybody who's had that type of stuff. They have the most twisted, fucked up sense of humor that you can have with anybody, which is great. But like,
Absolutely.
you're this like free dude. I mean, I don't think people understand how intense it is when you go through some sort of trauma, and it's however you view it, man. It could be tripping on something and hurting your hand and people laughing at you. Um,
Sure.
but it's just how we filter out how we think we're different, and then we like reenact that throughout all of our things in life. But it gets really extreme. But you were fucking you got you experienced some violent, crazy stuff, and it affected
Absolutely.
you massively for years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what? Just experiencing who you are in the Neville Goddard, type way of things. Like, how do you go from? It sounds so simple. It sounds like
Wow.
saying hello.
So how to get here from there, or how to get from there to here? Is that
Yeah,
what?
yeah, 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 yeah. Like what happened, man?
Cool. Uh, Here's the short version of it. And I've had a few people say, yeah, well, let me just toss it out, then I'll do my take back. PTSD is nothing more than the imagination out of control. That doesn't diminish it at all. Yeah,
Right.
it was living hell. So, PTSD is nothing more. I think I lost sound. You
I'm
still there?
good. I hear you.
Okay, cool. So PTSD is nothing more than the imagination out of control.
Yeah.
That doesn't take anything away from it. It's a pretty serious disease. But the imagination being out of control is pretty serious, right? And so it was through a lot of work, a lot of it based on the teachings of Neville, that I decided to start taking the imagination back under control, right? I wrote a little book about it. It's $7, no big deal. PTSD free. You can find it on Kindle or on my website. But yeah, I devised a series of thoughts experiments in there. But to give you the shortest version, it's this. You know, current neurological research indicates that every time we access a memory, the memory changes, right? So if you could imagine a memory being like a plate on the shelf, and you pull it off and you look at it and access it and you put it back, it's changed based on the state you're in while you take it off and put it back, right? So every time you access a memory, it changes. So this crazy thought shows up in my head. Why don't I change them deliberately? Right. And again, there's some NLP based around this and some Native American teachings as well. That, they all fit together with me perfectly.
Hmm.
So anytime you access a memory, change it. Change it into what you want. Okay. So that, like, for example, I don't change that the riot didn't happen. My elbows still hurt. I had to put up my elbows to protect my
Yeah.
face at one point. Right. So the elbows still hurt 25 years later on a bad day. Right. So I don't deny that. But in my mind, I created enough false, different, cool memories about the riot that the bad days don't bother me because there's enough other memories in there. So, it doesn't matter if the memory is real or false. It's going to impact you, right?
Hmm.
So you can, use that to change you can literally change your past like that without a problem. Two, a second thing that I've worked with a lot of PTSD people, including myself, was instantly, if you're having a bad day, or a bad thing, or somebody gets in your face and you're pissed off or whatever, I use three little words. I remember when, to just shift things in the past. And again, it works out wonderfully. If you're having a freak out or you're upset or whatever, you can go, yeah, stop. I remember when I was upset. And it's just a tiny little phrase, but it shifts things around. Yeah, it's phenomenal for people with self-esteem issues. It's like, oh man, they looked at me funny. Okay, remember when you were upset. Oh yeah, I remember when I was upset about that. And you could just watch their neurology shift immediately. So there's all sorts of little things that when it came to healing the PTSD and learning how to run my own life again, and the key is it's not about controlling my own life. It's about creating it. And the thing with PTSD, just to take a tiny side note, when your life's out of control, you start seeking control. And it's sort of, it's like keeping the problem is control and keeping that central in the focus. But to get beyond all that, literally, I got to get creative with the imagination and also get creative with life. That's why I'm a content producer. I can produce content all day long. I can write articles, make recordings. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, people contact me to make custom stuff for them. No problem. I can just churn it out because I'm good at it. But I took the imagination from being about control. It's out of control. I must get control of it again. Okay, that's both yin and yang kind of things based on control. Who's in control, the outside or the inside? Back to Wuji. What do I want to create with the imagination? And to notice what can I create with the imagination? I get to notice what is, and that can be anything in my life, a conversation with you, an email that I get, anything that I could create a good piece of content or a product out of or something to benefit or bless people. And so I can take anything from what is and flirt with what's possible with it. Get it?
Yeah. And I want to ask you more about that, but let's step back to the PTSD trauma stuff. I mean,
yep.
When I would be like, I want to, I'd get fucking crazy and angry and violent and all this sort of stuff while having sex. And then I know people that, let's say they've experienced trauma in some way and they, a guy pushes them and they snap and they can't, and they black out. Mm-hmm. When you're at that level of just like chaos in your head, like let's say if I'm having sex and this girl, I notice she's submissive and then it triggers me to like just go into a state and then I feel guilty over that. That was like, that took so much experience, of sexual activity for me to even get to a place where I could be like, okay, wait a minute, it's happening. Okay, how do I calm down? And what do you say to a guy like that? Because it's such a tough thing. I mean, this is like, it's like something happens, X happens, and Y has to happen. I notice this thing, let's say somebody ruffles my feathers. I want to act violent, or I get afraid, or I get terrified. I start hyperventilating. Where do you start from that panic moment? That like supercharged, like, that person believes that they're going to have that belief for the rest of their life. Where is step one for a person like that?
So if we were doing a coaching thing or a training thing, right? The temptation is, there's always two things. There's a temptation and an invitation. Okay? The temptation is to add more shit in. Here's the technique to deal with it.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So for the guy that's got all that going on, he doesn't need a technique to deal with it. That's just one more thing that he's got to sort through the junk in his trunk, right? Yeah. So the key is, and it's going to sound very simple, and it is,
sure.
Anything you notice, you're not. So if you can notice, losing it.
That's actually a great perspective. Keep going.
Yeah. So if I can notice losing it, okay, notice I'm not saying I'm losing it because that sucks you into it. But literally, what's going on? What's going on is a process called losing it. And as soon as that's noticed as a process, you're separate from it. Yeah. Right? And a tiny bit of natural dissociation, not make a picture of yourself, making a picture of yourself bullshit, right? A tiny little bit of just noticing creates the separation.
Yeah.
And that separation, and it's not really a separation, it's a separation from what isn't real. Okay, which again goes into a whole different weird semantic universe. Yeah. But it's extremely empowering because as soon as I notice, I'm a little. Oh yeah, there's this process known as I'm a little. Yeah, noticing creates the distance. So literally, it's if we talk, there's the illusion of the doer. Okay, we can step out a little bit and be the observer, someone who makes observations. We can step out a little bit more and be the witness. And there's much more power in being the witness. Just literally noticing, oh, okay, this is where the temptation to losing it is. Just noticing it. That's the invitation back to oneness, to noticing what you are, which is consciousness, and potential, which is Wuji.
Yeah.
Versus lose it or don't lose it. Oh, I've got to struggle with losing it or don't lose it. Oh, that's a really warped yin yang, right? Yeah.
Awesome.
So we just step back. And it's not technique, it's just noticing, oh, look at that.
Yeah. And it's so weird too, because it sounds like it wouldn't work in that. That's I don't want to say similar to my process. How I did it, a lot of writing, a lot of talking about it with people, but writing about things which I thought, I want to write about the instances. But when I started writing about my shames, my fears, the things that
Yes.
I thought were wrong with me and right with me, which ultimately became an illusion, all sort of stuff, that's where I was able to be calm. That's
Yeah.
where I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's no, you know, guilt or shame to attach that's holding this back. And so when I feel,
Yes.
whatever is fear or anger, it can pass. I can have fluidity with it. But that's a very cool perspective. If you could notice it, it's not a part of you.
Yeah.
That's
Being willing to, there's two key words: being willing to notice and accept it. Acceptance is the second word.
yeah.
So,
Acceptance
so,
is
so,
key.
so being
Yeah,
willing to notice and accept that showed up. And
yeah.
that could be old history. That could just be biology. That could be, we're wired to go to war. If you think the human body is designed to go kill things, whether it be a deer or another human, it's human history. Out of all this history on the planet, the body's still playing catch up to culture. With culture, we don't have to go to war,
Hmm.
but biology still wants to go kill something, right? That it is what it is. But if we can just notice, oh, there's biology. Look at it act up. Wants to go kill a squirrel or yell at somebody. Cool.
Mm,
So,
very
so,
cool.
so, so being willing to notice it and accept it, no judgment, because judgment will drag you back down into it. So I'm just
Exactly.
willing to notice and accept it. Oh, cool, rock on.
Yeah.
Just like the rough sex bit. If I'm willing to notice and accept it as a part of me, it'll show up when it needs to, and it won't show up when it doesn't.
Well, man, judgment, that's one of those things. We have these things that we call antisocial behaviors. So if
Yeah,
you keep
yeah,
doing them,
yeah.
you're going to develop an antisocial persona, and then you're going to be an antisocial person, and that's never good. But judgment, one of those things, blame another. And we all do
Yep.
them. I do them all the time. I'm constantly judging, constantly blaming, and there's those things that happen, but I need to notice them. And that's
Yeah.
man, and another thing that uh, has helped me big time. Um, God, and helped so many people, and everybody hates this. I know I hated it when I got this advice, but it was just notice it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to steal that thing right now. I want to hurt that person. But somehow, man, that is so powerful. Rather than doing this crazy thing, that is going to fix us. That being said, you were talking about creativity right before that. You were talking
Yes.
about just doing and just expressing, and that I loved that. That was so cool because I am like that. I am crazy like that. But one of the things that was so hard for me and still can be is I would go through these manic episodes. So when it came to theater and light design, I would go crazy for 2 weeks. You work, I think I'm talking to God, and then I'm like arguing with the director about stuff, and I, pulled off some pretty badass light designs, and directed and did a bunch of stuff, and acted a bunch, and then in photography and in all forms of art, I relied on this manic state in order to express. And when I got older, I couldn't do that. The body was like, nope, nope.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
started doing all these customized writing things for people, and I'd write all night, and then they became very popular, and I just couldn't do it. And then I started to build my business. I'd build my business in 2 days in a 4 month period of all the content that was there, and then I'd spend the rest of that time getting mad at myself for not being able to keep up on that sort of regimen. And in that, like I talked to a lot of people about it. It's like, oh well, I write every day, okay, so try that, and it helped. But really what I had to do was get out of the way of myself and learn how to just express. When it comes to like internet marketing, it's like, open up that, that Aweber account and I got to write all these emails. Oh man, I've got to then write this content. Oh, I've got to do this. And then it just seems like this taxing thing rather than I am,
Yes.
expressing within the realms of emails, within the realms of blog posts, making videos. And it's a hard thing to get to. So I found that really awesome with what you had just said about the expression, and your relationship with evolving past the PTSD and all that sort of stuff. So it was very cool. I don't know if there's a question in there, but man, more tips on expressing and creating.
It's all good. It's all good.
Cool. Well, hey man, during this whole thing, everybody's going to see this thing underneath your name that says freeneville.com. Is that the best site that they should go to you, or what, how do they get a hold of you? All that sort of stuff, shoot you an email. What's up?
God, what do you think they'd be looking for? In other words, how could I best serve them? Because I've got a couple different pieces of real estate on the net.
I really think anything which is going to help with perspective. When it comes down to the sexual life, it's not necessarily, if you want to learn about meeting women and social dynamics, it's really the social dynamic to be a better person, to be a better you. So it's all about being the better you,
Got it.
And
tell you what,
yeah, go ahead.
check out nlplive.com.
Okay.
There's some good articles there, but I'm really going to toss it out of the box. Feel free to check out the websites, but drop me an email. 2020 at exhostage.com. That's 2020 at exhostage.com. Do that. Because I'll just toss out a little challenge, because it's so freaking safe, right? To go to a website, check this guy out, see if there's something I like, if I like him, dislike him, all that stuff. Instead, right? Let's practice what we're preaching here. Okay, let's reach out. My invitation is drop me an email. I promise you I'll reply. If I don't, send it again, because it may get lost in a bunch of emails.
Right.
But I'll promise a reply, and that way I just get to meet the readers or the listeners a little bit. I'd love that. It's really the kind of stuff I live for. So
Wow.
so if you want to put my email up there instead, that'd be wonderful. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So you handle that kind of volume, huh?
I'm pretty busy. But the only emails I don't reply to is when someone sends me 15 in a day. Then I just wait and like skim all 15 and send one reply, which there's a couple people out there that communicate that way. That's fine, but I can't do that. But
Man, well, for me, I answer all the emails that I get, and it's
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
important. But man, it can be tough at times because it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's a little bit, and then it's
absolutely.
like boom, and you're like, oh man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I agree. When you can read, when somebody just writes like kind of static, you can't get a feel for them. But when they really, and you can tell they're writing from themselves. It's like,
Yes.
wow, man, cool. Let's talk. And that's what I always say. It's like, hey, jump on one of our calls. We have 16 hours of calls. So I work a lot because I like working. Everybody's always like work less, but I love what I do. We have 16 hours of calls, maybe more a week. And it's like, man, jump
That's
on one of
awesome.
our calls. Get to know some of the guys, because that's what it's about. And a lot of times they jump on the calls and they're like, but this isn't this PowerPoint, instructional on how to. And it's like, well, hey, we want to talk and learn how to socialize and get to know people. What do you want to learn? We'll give you the PowerPoint instruction on it, but we're very relaxed. And I love it. And it's just so cool. It's so cool. And man, I got to tell you, my mind for marketing and all that sort of stuff has opened so much in so many ways. And it really started with a couple events, and you were part of that chain reaction. It was a good deal. So
Yeah, cascading series of events.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Good
Well,
one, man.
well, cool, man. We'll have to do it again. You enjoy your day. It's like Monday afternoon.
Yep, Monday, 1:30 p.m. I'll Skype my wife. She'll come home. We'll have a lovely dinner or lunch, and
Awesome. Good
nap
stuff.
time.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it's 8:30 over here in San Antonio. So, all right, man. It's still Sunday. Good stuff.
yeah.
Man, can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. Let's do it again.
Yeah, you got it, dude.